The Data Collectors. Written by Danielle Pai. Narrated by Graham Mack and Danielle Pai.
29. The Grand Escape. Now, 5 years after the assembly.
This is the end of the line,
Odessa called.
I can't take you any further, but I suspect you know the way from here.
They docked their boat at the water's edge with little concern about securing it and climbing onto a narrow stretch of sandy shore, not much wider than 3 feet, before being engulfed by towering tupelo trees. "Thank you, Odessa." Tanager's voice was warm and grateful.
Didn't do it for you.
She replied as she swam away.
This is my home, too.
Cepheus sniffed the air momentarily. "This way," he instructed. Tanager and Lucine struggled to keep up with Cepheus as he seemed to move his body in putty-like fashion, wiggling between low-lying overgrown foliage. It was when he reached the freshwater swamp and began nimbly dancing across cypress knees and clinging to trees without ever actually sticking a toe in the water that his 2 followers stopped to assess their situation. Cepheus disappeared soon after. It was then that they heard low voices in the distance. "Hang on, I've got you covered." Ivan suddenly appeared, sloshing through the water carrying 2 additional sets of hip boots and a caving helmet. "Put these on. I've got cottonmouths in here." Tanager obeyed, but looked confused.
Venomous snakes,
Lucine explained, putting on the lit helmet before also accepting the boots.
You don't need to be poisoned twice in one day.
"It's just up a ways," Ivan motioned. After suiting up and following Ivan's lead, it wasn't long before the mongrel was in view, floating effortlessly above the water. It was what lay beyond it that caused Lucine to suck in her breath. Her helmet light caught a glimpse of something protruding from the center of the swamp. It was a tall, moss-covered dome with branches sticking out of it from all directions. It blended with its surroundings. With the exception of its placement, somehow she recognized what it was. At that moment the branches moved as a hatch at the top opened and Cepheus climbed out. There was little surprise on Lucine's part that he had found his way inside the craft with such speed. "Quickly, my friend," he called to Ivan. Ivan sloshed on as fast as possible, artfully grabbing tree limbs attached to the outside of the spacecraft and making his way to the top. He was not as nimble as his taller, more slender friend, but it was clear he was comfortable climbing. He followed Cepheus down the hatch inside. "It isn't much," Tanager apologized, turning to Lucine from their watery ground-level view, "but it is more modern than what you on Earth are used to. A bit more space and a few more comforts. Plus, we have the option of being in hibernation for at least part of the trip."
How long did you say this trip would be?
Lucine asked, standing knee-deep in water. "If Ivan was successful in creating a virtual engine to link our actual engine, then we may be able to make it home in half the time it took us to get here. About 6 months.
This is a lot to take in.
Lucine was pale. "It may provide solace to you to know that if your current space agency attempted the same trip, it would take them approximately 115 years to reach our planet, given their present technology."
A little soulless,
Lucine agreed. Tanager touched her shoulder, and that familiar comforting energy flowed through her. "I understand your feelings. Unfortunately, you are not safe here. We are your best option for survival."
And if I hate it there, can I come back?
"I wish I could make that promise, but I cannot guarantee we have the resources to do so. Not without risking more lives and spending an enormous amount of money to do it." He was empathetic to the deep. Conflicting emotions that Lucine was feeling. Sadness, doubt, fear, excitement, and hope all rolled into one. "You haven't been alive here for some time. You've been hiding for years without knowing why. What I can promise you is that the quality of life, your life, will be better with us, if we can safely get you home."
You keep saying home as if it's mine, but this is the only home I've ever known.
And how has that home treated you?
Well, I have my friends, Fatima and Ivan and Isabella.
Tanager cringed at the mention of Isabella, though he wasn't sure why.
Hey, over here.
Fatima waved from the side of the craft. Her large frame looked mouse-sized by comparison. Roman was beside her and reached to steady her as she threatened to lose her footing. At that moment, a helicopter could be heard in the distance. "I don't mean to alarm you," Ivan popped his head out from the top of the craft, "but that's nae good." He was referring, of course, to the helicopter, which undoubtedly carried armed military personnel. "They don't take too kindly to aliens randomly stopping by and blowing houses up." The irony of a team of soldiers waging war at the loss of members of the Intergalactic Peace Project was lost on them, as the explosion, suspiciously, did not reach the news. "Best if we talk inside." He climbed to the top of the craft. "Roman, can you help Fatima climb aboard? And then the others?" Roman, who had slipped back into a quiet funk of depression mixed with shame, found renewed energy at the thought of possible redemption, and of being useful. He offered his arm to Fatima. "May I?" he asked, sheepishly. Fatima gently took his arm. A funny scene, given that they were sloshing in murky water and not about to waltz on a marble dance floor as his gesture suggested. She began to climb the side of the craft, and was more agile than Ivan had anticipated. "Just go for the handles that look like rounded branches. They are secure to hold on to and step on," he offered. Roman held his hand at Fatima's back, and once realizing she was a nimble climber, began to follow her.
I used to use the rock climbing wall at my gym all the time back in the day.
Fatima called to Roman proudly. "I can see that. Good going." Roman forced a smile. "Shall we?" Tanager suggested, lifting an upturned hand towards the craft as an invitation. "This isn't a trap, and you don't have to go with us if you don't want to."
I know.
Lucine looked into his eyes. She knew he wasn't lying to her.
You go first.
But Tanager was well versed in old customs that called for the male allowing the woman to take the lead.
You almost died today.
Lucine reasoned.
Even with leftover sedatives in my system, I maintain that I could sooner catch you if you lose footing than the other way around.
Tanager hated to admit that she was right. "I will follow your suggestion. Not because I am unable, but because time is of the essence." Lucine giggled. "What's funny?" Tanager asked.
Time is of the essence?
She laughed.
The only slang you know from this side of the planet is nearly a century old?
Really? They don't say that anymore? He glanced over his shoulder as he climbed.
Hardly ever,
she assured him. The entrance to the vessel was centrally located, planting the group, who had now formed a small circle around the ladder leading upward, right at the main control room. Fatima, Roman, and Lucine looked around in wonder. Thick bucket seats with harnesses, 4 on each side of the craft, lined the walls, facing outward. It almost appeared as if a human-sized suit were built into each one, just waiting to wrap around anyone who sat in them. 2 had steering panels in front of them, while the others had an assortment of navigational gear. Additional display panels lined the walls above and below them, all within reach, even when seated. While the chairs faced light green metal walls at present, uneven panelling suggested that they opened up to reveal windows to the outside world. Ivan and Cepheus wasted no time. They had to finish testing the system, with Cepheus taking a seat at one of the controls and Ivan disappearing through a hatch in the floor leading to the engine room. Moments later, he and Cepheus were communicating over an intercom, barking commands back and forth. "There is a surprising amount of greenery in here," Roman noticed. Hanging from the walls were a variety of air plants and vines. "Yes, we find it helps keep us calm, even during stressful situations," Tanager answered. "They also help purify the air, and many of them are actually edible." To demonstrate, Tanager plucked a white flower from one of the vines and took a bite. He then picked a second one and offered it to Roman, who took a hesitant bite. Roman wrinkled his forehead in anticipation, but then relaxed. "It tastes like honey," he proclaimed, rather happily. From where they stood, they could see the corners of 4 slightly partitioned-off rooms, with only one having a visible door. One corner appeared to be the sleep station, another a small efficiency kitchen and dining station, the third a fitness and bath area, and the fourth seemed more hidden away.
What's through there?
Lucine asked. "It's our study and meditation room," Tanager answered. "Let me show you."
This is like the coolest tiny house I've ever seen.
Fatima nodded excitedly.
With real estate being a premium, I think this is fabulous the way you made space for a meditation room.
While we use it ourselves, we constructed this one with Lucine in mind. It is the vessel's largest room, aside from the engine room. Tanager motioned for them to follow. He slid a wood-covered metal door to one side. Lucine felt herself emotionally pulled inside. It had the faint smell of wild ferns, with soft lighting and a domed ceiling that gave the illusion of a sunrise or sunset, depending on what time of day you were in the room. It adjusts the scene throughout the day so that it feels less confined on our journey. It also helps us keep ourselves adjusted to the days as we travel. Extraordinary, was all that Roman could say. There were deep couches forming a circle sitting on top of a soft grass floor. The walls were forest-like, giving the illusion of being outside surrounded by trees with the sounds of birds and cicadas in the distance. In one corner, a small waterfall began trickling quietly on cue with people entering the room.
Wait.
Fatima pursed her lips.
Don't you have to wear clunky spacesuits all the time and float around uncomfortably all the way home?
We have lightweight emergency suits in the event of unexpected climates or internal malfunctions, Tanager answered. But for the most part, we are able to maintain an internal gravity system and oxygen supply much like Earth. We are typically able to wear whatever garb we choose. Lucine, who had been looking up at their internal sky the entire time, mesmerized, said to Tanager,
Okay. Okay, what?
Fatima asked.
Okay.
Lucine looked at Tanager, and he heard her thoughts.
I will go with you.
His facial expression was one of relief. I think that means she's agreed to go with them, my doll, Fatima, Roman answered, catching himself before calling her darling. Yes! Ivan could be heard exclaiming from across the vessel. While I share in your excitement, Cepheus called back, we must leave now. I can feel them closing in. Sure enough, from one of his monitors, he could tell the helicopters were getting closer, which meant the trucks and seacrafts could not be far behind. One monitor was also beginning to pick up voices in the distance. Gather, quickly, Tanager commanded. The group obeyed, circling up once again in the center of the vessel. We have enough provisions and space for whomever wishes to join us, but you have to decide now.
Fatima, you should come with us. They can fix your heart.
Lucine implored. Fatima's eyes welled up.
I can't go,
she almost whispered.
My family is here.
But the military and police will never leave you alone, Roman warned. It won't be long before they discover your connections to the data collectors, and they will arrest you for interrogation.
But I have nothing to hide,
Fatima answered.
Once they return home, what secrets will I have?
Unfortunately, they might not see it that way, Roman warned. Ivan stepped up. That's if they find us. I happen to own this land and all 125 acres of this preserve and another 200 acres on the other coast. I can help Fatima hide if necessary and reunite her with her family at a time when it is safe. Roman felt a pang of possessive jealousy, but pushed it aside, as he knew he had no right to. I'm not sure it will ever be safe, but I support your decision if you decide to stay.
Thank you. I will stay, and I trust Ivan to keep us safe.
Ivan's face lit up with the pride of a small child who just rode his bike without training wheels. Aye, I'll do my best. I assume that means you will be staying, Ivan. Aye, he nodded, simultaneously with Cepheus, as if they'd already had this discussion. I have technology that needs to get into the right hands in order for us to have a chance of surviving in this multiverse. We are far too behind. Yes. And remember, it came from you. Aye, Ivan nodded. I feel funny taking credit, but I understand why. And you? Cepheus put a hand on Roman's shoulder. You know, I would give anything to come with you. Roman teared up. For me to heal and maybe even find Far someday. You are welcome with us, friend, Tanager reassured him. We need to get, Ivan announced. He gave Cepheus a bear hug, which caught him off guard for a moment, before he wrapped his arms gently around his friend in a return hug. Ye too. Bring it in. He hugged Tanager, who awkwardly hugged him back. It wasn't as if they didn't show physical affection on his planet. He just wasn't used to Earthlings being forthright about it. He followed suit, giving Roman a hesitant half-hug, half-pat on the back. Roman did the same in return. You're okay, Ivan decided. Roman smiled weakly back. Thanks, he replied. Finally, it was Lucine's turn.
I'll miss you, Ivan.
Lucine's eyes welled up as she embraced him fiercely. Right back at ya, he answered, circling his arms around her small frame. Fatima followed Ivan's lead, hugging each of them one at a time. At last, Fatima faced Lucine, both now crying feverishly.
I want to miss you so much. You're my best friend. I should tell you that I think you're crazy for going, but I understand why you would. Just be careful, okay? I'm gonna miss you too.
Lucine wailed back as the two women wrapped their arms around one another.
I'll be okay. I'll find some way to contact you, I promise.
Fatima released her and nodded. Suddenly, Lucine gasped.
Oh my God, what about Bagheera? Safely in the mongrel, don't worry. I wouldn't let anything happen to our fur baby.
Lucine let out a sigh of relief. We need to go now. Ivan took Fatima's arm gently. The 4 remaining crew members watched as Ivan and Fatima climbed up the stairs and through the hatch. Cepheus, I'll signal you when we're a safe distance from the vessel. Cepheus nodded. Stay safe, my friend. Once they exited, Tanager moved quickly. Please take your seats and pull on the lever to the right of your chair. Don't be alarmed. The suits embedded in the seats will wrap around you and conform to your shape. The harnesses should then trigger automatically. He motioned to them to take specific seats on the opposite side of the control room, with he and Cepheus on the other. The two obeyed, and Lucine and Roman were soon strapped in place and feeling as if layered in bubble wrap, with a thin window to the world where oxygen flowed. I won't have time to give further instructions until we're out of this atmosphere, he yelled so they could hear him through the suits, testing their harnesses to make sure they were secure. For now, treat this like a roller coaster in one of your theme parks. Keep your head upright, your back against the seat, and hold on to your armrests. It will be a bit intense at first, but the pressure won't last long. Once we're clear, I will give the okay to get up and move around. With that, he strapped in beside Cepheus and turned on their audio gear. He took a deep breath. Are you ready, my friend? Cepheus asked. Ready, Tanager confirmed. As if on cue, a message came over the ship's speakers. It was Ivan. We're clear. Go now and be safe. Ivan and Fatima were now in the mongrel, travelling through the swamps at a low speed to avoid detection. Even if they can see us, Ivan reasoned, they won't have the vehicles to get into these close spaces. He manoeuvred the vehicle through the swamp grass and trees, and Fatima could have sworn that the mongrel was ever so slightly changing shape to match the terrain.
Where are we headed?
Fatima asked. Well, once we exit the preserve, we need to ditch this vehicle. Which reminds me.
Yes?
Is your car reliable enough to get us to the outer coast?
My car, of course. You of all people should know since you're the only one who repairs it, silly.
Fatima laughed.
I don't see how it can help us. We left it back at Roman's apartment, remember?
Well, I have a wee confession.
Ivan, what did you do?
Well, you remember at dinner when I showed you that little present I made for you?
Not at all.
Fatima confessed. Ivan let out a sigh. Never mind. Can you reach inside your bag and fetch me your phone?
Sure.
Fatima reached behind the seat to retrieve it. Now, just follow my instructions exactly. Ivan began rambling off demands that began with, hit the numbers 1 and 5 while pressing and releasing the power button 3 times. And eventually ended with, OK, now restart your phone and tell me what you see. Fatima restarted the phone.
I see a map with a little blue dot on it. The dot is moving.
Where's the dot headed?
Looks like it's headed toward the highway, not far from here.
Yes, Ivan shouted. Keep your eye on where that little dot goes, OK?
Sure, why?
We've summoned your car. With any luck, it'll meet us somewhere. We can easily retrieve it.
Seriously?
Fatima looked over Ivan, wearing his torn jeans, faded shirt and hip boots. He hadn't even bothered to take his spelunking helmet off.
You are full of surprises, Ivan.
Aye, he smiled. Looks can be deceiving. Didn't know I was such a great catch, did you?
So I'm discovering.
Fatima sank back into her seat.
Did you say you were going to some land you own on the other coast? Do you really have over 200 acres?
Well, it's more like 700 acres in total. Fatima's eyes grew wide. Figured I'd buy as much land as I could while I had the money to help prevent more developments and habitat loss. Moments later, she heard a shuffling from the back of the mongrel. Bagheera had long ago found his way out of the carpet bag and had been curled up in a corner in the back of the vehicle.
I suppose we'll have to pick up a litter box somewhere soon.
The realization hit them both at the same time. Too late. Ivan wrinkled his nose as the scent of cat urine wafted to the front of the vehicle.
I suppose we had that coming.
Fatima reasoned.
Stuffing the poor boy in a bag.
Aye. Ivan's entire face cringed at the aroma. Just then, Fatima's phone began to ring.
It's my mom. She must have heard the news and is freaking out.
Don't answer and don't touch anything on your phone, not until we get your car.
But she's just going to keep calling, and if I don't answer, everybody in my family will be on high alert.
As soon as we get to the other coast, we'll find a way to get a message to them, I promise. Fatima nodded and sank back in her seat. 30. Drake and Morphani. Tuesday evening, one day after the escape. Things hadn't gone at all the way Drake had planned. He sat in a club chair in the corner of his hotel suite, staring at the floor. A wall-mounted reading light hung over him as he poured himself yet another scotch. It was well after midnight. But he was still dressed in a dark blue suit with a matching tie and a crisp white shirt underneath, from an earlier meeting with the Royals. He hadn't even bothered to take his leather shoes off. Behind him, the waves of the Gulf could be heard crashing against the shore, along with the faint sound of beachcombers drunkenly singing Margaritaville and laughing as if no one had thought of that before. At 12:09 a.m., there was a knock at the balcony door. Not the front door, mind you, but the balcony door, which was 3 stories from ground level. "Come in, Morphani," Drake grunted. Morphani entered the room quietly via the balcony, and Drake did not even question how he managed the lock. This evening, Morphani was dressed as he remembered him as a boy. Torn jeans, a blue crochet face, and with button eyes. "Do you know why I'm here?" Morphani asked, standing over the man. "Why don't you tell me?" Drake answered roughly, downing the last of his drink and looking up at Morphani. "I upset the balance when I saved you that day. I have to make amends. Killing me won't make amends, Drake laughed nervously. Do you know how many people have been murdered or injured as a result of my actions? 3,248, Morphani said, blinking. Drake hung his head. Can you grant a man one final drink before taking your revenge? Of course, Morphani granted. But I'm only a balance keeper. I seek no revenge. Right. Drake poured himself as tall a serving as his glass would allow, and held up the bottle to offer Morphani some as well. Morphani shook his head, declining. If it helps, I will not kill you in any worse manner than the fate you would have suffered if you had drowned. In fact, if you prefer, I can drown you in the... It's probably best if you don't tell me and make it as quick as possible. Drake held up his hand. Of course. I will try not to make you suffer. Why are you being so nice to me? Drake questioned. I don't even deserve it. I hold myself accountable as much as you do, Morphani explained. After all, had I not saved you, none of this would have happened. I feel as much remorse as I sense you two now feel. I tried not to care, Drake gulped back his scotch. I tried to be the hard businessman and consummate professional. But then I turned over the nicest employees, nicest woman I have ever known, to some of the worst people on the planet. Strike that, in the universe. He brushed away what looked like a tear. And in the end, I couldn't go with them. Couldn't bear to watch what they might do to her. I am weak. Morphani nodded. I understand. I'm not prone to feelings, and yet I was moved too when she was almost taken by the royals. Almost? Drake gazed a drunken head up with interest. Yes, the peacekeepers from Tara intervened just in time. Excellent, that's great, Drake answered, thinking. Where is Lucine now? She's with them. Why does it matter? Morphani nodded, noting that Drake was nearly finished with his drink. Well, you are technically a Vitruvian, are you not? Yes, but I am also a balance keeper. We follow a special law. You know this. But wouldn't it help you make amends for your actions if you and I worked together to bring Lucine to your people instead? I mean, who better to ensure her powers are used in the fairest way possible than the Vitruvians? The Bleeding Heart peacekeepers on Erde wouldn't even begin to know what to do with that kind of power. Morphani's face dropped into a frown of disappointment, and Drake could almost see a shadow pass before his eyes. He set down his empty glass. With no further hesitation, Morphani spoke. It's time. 31. Isabella and the Longhorn Beetle. Tuesday evening, one day after the escape.
How are you feeling, Reverend Isabella?
The nurse asked the woman lying in a hospital bed in a private room. She was no longer being given oxygen, but an IV was still supplying her with necessary painkillers and healing remedies. Unlike the stark white walls and rampant smell of disinfectant in the old-style hospital care, this one had nature green walls and sea-coloured tile floors. The faint blend of cinnamon and clove could be detected in the air. There was a light drumming music playing over a portable sound system in the room.
I am well, my dear Miranda.
Isabella smiled at the young nurse. She thought to tell her she needn't call her Reverend outside of the ceremony, but decided against it. Knowing Miranda, she would continue to do so anyway, and chastise her every time she forgot. So she remained silent.
I was shot the other evening in my own sanctuary, and yet here I am, still alive to talk about it. I guess the universe isn't finished with me yet.
Miranda smiled at her minister in gratitude.
Of course it isn't. We need you.
With that, the nurse left, and Isabella settled in for a short meditation. As she began drifting off to the quiet sound of drums, she noticed something.
Oh, hello there.
She glanced at the large yellow and black longhorn beetle that was resting calmly on her arm.
I didn't see you until just now. A beetle is a sign of transformation. Will you now be taking me to a different realm?
The beetle gave no response, but instead of brushing it away, Isabella simply laid back and smiled, sinking into her meditation.
Oh no.
Odessa thought happily as she calmly rested on the older woman's arm.
You're right about transformation. Your friend Miranda is also correct. This world needs you.
She smiled in anticipation.
We are going to have so much fun together.
This has been The Data Collectors, written by Danielle Pye, narrated by Graham Mack and Danielle Pye. Copyright 2020 by Danielle Pye. Production copyright by Danielle Pye.